All right. It's so nice to see people logging in. I know this is such a busy time. We were just talking about that before I started letting people into the waiting room. So thank you for making time for this. We're really excited about it. And, I think we might as well just get started because it's 7 o'clock. We want to have as much time as we can. I don't see anyone else in the waiting room at the moment, and we'll just let people in as they come in. So let me introduce myself. My name is Sharon Friedner, and I'm the Associate Director of the Career Options Resource Center at Hampshire College. And my colleague Karen is here as well. She is the director. Hello. Karen Rank. Hi. You might hear little kid sounds in the background of my audio too. So if you hear funny sounds, don't worry. It's just preschoolers. So welcome. This is Poetry as a Way of Life. And we're so excited to have 3 members of the Hampshire Writers Advisory Council here tonight to share poetry with you and to share their paths, to talk a little bit about what it really looks like to be a poet. How do you live as a poet? But before we go forward with that, let me just tell you a little bit about what the Writers Council is. Karen has dropped a link in the chat to the Writers Council website, which has a lot of great information on it and full bios of all our speakers and all the members of the council. And it's basically just a group of alumni who have committed to supporting Hampshire writers, supporting students, supporting young alums by doing events like this one, talking about what it means to be a writer in all kinds of different ways. Wow, more and more people are coming in. That's great. So I want to introduce our speakers just by name and have them wave so you can see who they are. And then they'll do a more full introduction of themselves later when they speak. So we have Chen Chen. Do you want to just wave? Hey, Chen. And Unique Robinson. And Aaron Fagan is here. So 3 fabulous poets, and I'm tempted to want to tell you all the amazing things about them, but then I want them to say it in their own words, so you will hear more. But I would love if you would introduce yourselves in the chat. We don't have time to go around and have everyone introduce themselves out loud, but if you could introduce yourself in the chat, maybe give us your name and your pronouns, a div level, maybe type of poetry you like to write or anything else you want to share. Would be great, just so we can see who's here. And if you're alum, you can indicate that, or staff or faculty. It's just nice to know who people are. So we're watching the chat to see your introductions. And I want to just explain the agenda for this evening. Pretty simple. We are going to allow each of our panelists 5 minutes to share some poetry and to tell you about their journey from Hampshire to now and what poetry has meant to them and what it looks like in their lives. So we'll just go from one to the other. We'll do Aaron, Chen, and then Unique. And then after that, we'll open it up for your questions and comments and conversation. So we hope to have a lot of time for that. So I'm not seeing any introductions in the chat, so please don't be shy. I'm sure that our panelists would love to know who you are. We do see your names, but just show us some life. Show us that you're there by writing something in the chat. We would love to see something about you. All right, and panelists, we have these lovely things that you have seen before. Remember these? So these will help you keep time. So just so we can keep on track. Did I miss anything? Let's see. All right. So I think we're good. And Aaron, you are up first. So I will yield the floor to you. And then put myself on mute so you don't have to hear little kiddos in the background. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to get together with the Hampshire community here. The poem that I'm going to read is titled Love. It's an older poem of mine, and it's one that I still have an affection for, and it's short. So, love. Say it's a form of heat that doesn't rise, but passes from one body to the next. Say it flows through you and then out and back in again, like a ghostly thread, weaving a pattern inside of you that will slowly begin to take the shape of what you'll think you can describe. And we have these prompts here to ask a few questions of ourselves. What does being a poet mean to you? Those aren't things that I think about, honestly. I can talk about what my trajectory was like from Hampshire to where I am now. You know, I always had a passion for poetry going back to when I was in high school. I remember flipping around in the textbook and discovering all these different poems that weren't a part of the curriculum. They were in the textbook, but we weren't studying them. And, you know, I had that feeling of like my scalp was tingling with excitement. And that's something that just has never left me. Poetry taps into some hidden or secret power of communication, something hidden or secret in language that is extremely powerful. Growing up, I saw language used as something was used to manipulate or hold power over people. And so I always had deep suspicion of language and its uses and its abuses more often than its uses. So I think I write probably more out of a hatred of language than any great love for it, because of the ways that I saw it used and abused growing up. But that said, I do see that it also has healing properties to it. So Hampshire is a place to study creative writing, language, literature, philosophy. Was just this infinite playground where ideas and exploring ideas wherever they might lead in a very organic and intuitive way was encouraged. And it was an environment where that kind of an investigation was supported. It wasn't something that was put on me in some sort of like prescriptive or artificial way. I would not have thrived in that kind of an environment. I guess as far as any advice that I might have where poetry is concerned is that always come back to your true north, your love for the art and your own art. It will show you the way. But writing to be published or anything like that, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I find that those are entirely the wrong motivations to write. I think I had this idea of wanting to be published at some point when I was in high school, but that was I was pretty quickly disabused of that by myself, not from anybody else. It seems entirely beside the point of the pursuit of and dedication to any kind of creative practice or whatever your passion is, you reach a point where being good at something or being recognized for it is not useful. So thank you.
So Aaron, I feel like you're just being so humble. And if people want to check out Aaron's bio on the Writers Council website, Aaron has published multiple books of poetry and has also edited anthologies. So that just something to know when you're thinking about questions later. Thank you, Aaron. It's wonderful to hear your the deeper meaning of poetry for you in your life. All right, Chen, you are next.
Great. Yeah, so the poem that I'll share came out just thinking about, that phrase, I love you to the moon and back, which is also a book, and playing with that. So this is, I love you to the moon and not back. Let's not come back. Let's go by the speed of queer zest and stay up there and get ourselves a little moon cottage, so pretty. Then start a moon garden with lots of moon veggies, so healthy. I mean, I was already moonlighting as an online moonologist most weekends. So this is the immensely logical next step. Are you packing your bags yet? Don't forget your Sailor Moon jean jacket. Let's wear our Sailor Moon jean jackets while twirling in that lighter, queerer moon gravity. Let's love each other so good on the moon. Let's love the moon on the moon. Thanks. So what does being a poet mean to me? It's such a huge question, kind of impossible to answer. I guess what I'm thinking of is, I started off wanting to be a TV writer, actually. I watched a lot of TV. I still watch probably too much TV. And TV writing is so interesting to me because of the episodic nature, right, of the storytelling, and that you can follow this, cast of characters over multiple seasons and really invest in them and how their lives change, how their characters change. So maybe one day I will write a TV episode or two. But I kind of think of poems in that way. They're like these little episodes of one's life, episodes of like the imagination, the adventures of the imagination, episodes of where the language is taking me. And so, yeah, I love that everything in a poem can really count. Every word, every silence, every punctuation mark, every question that comes up. And so I just love that whenever I'm in the space of writing a poem, I feel like things matter, even if I don't feel that way in myself at that moment. But returning to a poem, right, opens up that space again, and I want things to really matter. So that's what I'll say about that. My trajectory from Hampshire, so I got to take some really amazing workshops while I was there, got to work with Heather Madden, Deb Gorlin, Arcel Skurmai, also took workshops with Martina Spada at UMass Amherst, took this amazing Poetry of the Political Imagination class with him that just really expanded what I thought a poem could do, and got me thinking about the relationship between poetics and ethics, right? So like, what do you bring to the page is sort of what you're trying to bring into the world, right? And how you're trying to shift people's thinking, people's imagination. So from there, I did an MFA at Syracuse University. Lots of ups and downs in that program. And a lot of what I had to learn there was sort of being in a predominantly white literary space, predominantly cis hetero as well, how to exist in that space and how to exist on the page as a queer Asian American. So I sought out other forms of community. So for instance, Kundiman, which supports Asian American readers and writers based in New York, but they do events and programming all over the country. So they were really important. And then I went right into a PhD from there, which is not something I would really recommend because it was so much school. So much grad school. And I got kind of burnt out, actually. I'm still kind of processing and recovering from that. Because right from the PhD, I also started this position that I'm currently in at Brandeis as their visiting poet. So yeah, it's been kind of straight through. And I don't know if I could do anything like that except with poetry. I consider myself still quite introverted person. I need a lot of alone time, quiet space in order to process things and get back to the writing. But I'm such a, I love talking to other poets. I love talking about poetry. We're just such word nerds, and I love that about us. So yeah, poetry has been an amazing way that I've been able to find and build community. And so I guess the takeaway that I would leave you with is, think about like, what do you want to use this art, for, right? Obviously for yourself, right? In your, enrichment, your spiritual development, your expressive needs, but also what are you trying to build in the world? Like what do you want to see happen in terms of social change, in terms of community? So yeah, some questions. Thank you.
Chen, thank you so much. You timed it exactly perfectly. I didn't even need to hold up a sign. And I'm feeling like suddenly 5 minutes feels so short. Sometimes 5 minutes feels so long. So we definitely want to hear more from all of you after everyone has a chance to speak first. So Unique, you are next.
A rat died out back, so it's gonna be a while before you can walk through the alley without holding your breath. Right now, it smells like the valley of the shadow of death. What is left of this rat? A reeking reminder of what is left of our rights, but oh, this is all too commonplace for us. And I had to ask myself, why we hate rats so much, why every time we try to sweep our city's slate clean on silver screen, a rat jumps out of the wall of the theater of our minds, why we slice the necks of rats' throats for singing like Sinatra, breaking the codes of the rat pack, because everybody's still hypnotized by the book of Frank White. We pack like gats, we pack like rats and live right along with them. They're closer to us than we'd ever care to admit, closer to us than our infant cribs, which collapse onto crime scene when that rat bit Sister Nell with Whitey on the moon, slicing swallowed milk from newborns' throats. But oh, this is all too commonplace for us. Yes, even with masters now moved to crate, never finding its way to wall, a muted and very expensive lesson in obedience, I still must muster the strength to look away each time my eye gets a glimpse of mangled matter, body, formerly inhabited as rat, body, formerly inhabited as black. Which am I even discussing anymore? We merge into one in murder and martyrdom. That rat was somebody's matriarch, just like that rat was somebody's son. Pit bullied against his brother, a dog-eat-dog fight, never won. And figure that was a way to introduce myself. Hello, everyone. Thank you so, so much. I am Unique. I'm from Baltimore, so we see a lot of rats. So that's where that poem came from. It was a lot of my poems come from true, real live inspiration. So what does a poet mean to me? Freedom of expression, exploration of the depth of being and feeling is really what it's, I guess, come to symbolize in my life. It's like breathing. I've been writing since I was like 10. And I think of it as a medium for telling the truth, like June Jordan said. And of course, truth is subjective, right? But whose truth has been being told, right? It's time to start telling some other truths. So I'm kind of in that radicalized Black feminist version of poetry, if you will. What was my trajectory from Hampshire? I was a spoken word poet at Hampshire as well. Kept poeting when I moved to New York after graduating. I actually became a community organizer. That was a whole thing, and that was very draining. So I quit that job and actually decided to be a full-time poet. Started slamming in like New Eurekan and all of that. And then I was like, meh, New York, that's a lot. So then I moved to Oakland to go to grad school at Mills College. And while I was out there, I actually found some community, like Chen was saying, and we actually created stage productions about, well, like with poetry, called The State of Black Bodies. Me and 3 other folks that I went to grad school with. It was like, I don't know, 5 Black folks in that program. So we all decided to be a collective. So, but we did a lot of really great work, a lot of good performances and poetry and productions out in Oakland in the Bay Area. But gentrification said, you're moving back to Baltimore. So that happened in 2015. Really beautiful time. And I started working as a teaching artist, teaching poetry to folks in high school and middle school through this one organization, Do More Baltimore. And then that led to me teaching at the collegiate level. I now teach at MICA. I've been there for 6 years. That's Maryland Institute College of Art. And I've taught poetry courses, intermediate poetry, creative writing, frameworks, this really bizarre critical theory course. And I also still teach with K through 12 students in arts integration as well, doing poetry and performance and all of that. And I teach at Towson, a graduate poetry course. So I've decided to go the teacher route with it, which I'm actually really grateful for. I did not know that I was going to be a teacher when I was at Hampshire. That was not in the cards for me. I was just like, I just want to be an artist and social justice. And somehow those things are going to come together. And they did. So I'm really grateful for that. So watch what you say, because it'll happen. So what advice do I have for young poets who want to keep poetry in their lives? Well, for me, the open mic circuit was really big. That's how I formed a lot of community, made a lot of friends, and just heard other really great poets and performers. Write, no matter what anyone thinks of your writing, period. What do you think of your writing? That's what matters most, right? We as writers tend to lean on other people's for opinions and workshops and all of that. And then at the end of the day, you're like, well, where's my voice? I don't know who I am. So remember who you are in the middle of your writing and why you do it, right? Especially if you go to grad school, because it'll be a lot of that going on. Don't doubt your voice or let anyone drown it out, because that'll only add more pressure. So, you know, and lead you to the shoulds, the land of shouldsville, rather than just you trusting what you know you need to do and following your own voice and your own inspirations. You're a born creator at the end of the day. We have this craft for a reason, and whatever you decide to do with it, whether personal, professional, or a mix of both, just know that it's a gift. So honor it as such. And that's all I got to say. Thank y'all. Was that 5 minutes? I hope. Okay.
I think you hit 5 minutes exactly. Yeah. But that's not really the point, but timing is always so challenging. So thank you. That was amazing. And I feel like I could listen to each of you talk for a whole hour. So I want to open the floor to people to ask questions. And I know that we are recording. So if you don't want to have yourself in the recording, you can put a question in the chat, or we would actually love to see your faces and hear your voices. And if later if you would not like to be in the recording, we can always edit that out. So you can let us know not to put your face or voice in the recording, just email us. So floor is open. Let's see. I can only see some of you. I think we're onto multiple pages. So I think if you want to talk out, you'll just have to say, I have a question, just yell it out and we'll find you.
Hi.
We can hear you.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make
Hi,
sure.
Isabella.
Hi. My question is primarily for Chen, and I was wondering, what advice would you have for those aspiring to be a professor of creative writing, especially in the industry nowadays? It can be incredibly difficult to break into, from what I understand.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I actually had a job interview earlier today, so it's like very much on my mind. Yeah, the academic job market can be really, really difficult. And so I think it's important this is sort of, to Unique's point, keeping close why it is that you write. And I think continue to do that is really, really crucial. Because I think you can definitely kind of like lose yourself if you're not kind of grounded in your own priorities. And so I'd apply that same logic to navigating the academic system. If you're planning on going on to grad school, on the path to becoming a professor, just remember like why you want to do it, what really motivates you, what drives you. And some of that will come from the work, some of that will come from your passion for teaching, potentially, your passion for creating community in that, in the academic setting. So yeah, just pay attention to what you really want to prioritize, because there will be many, many distractions. There'll be many, people and initiatives and other kind of opportunities that will pull you in so many directions, right? And so I think it's important to remember you really don't have to say yes to everything, right? And to think about what opportunities are really right for you. And that can take many forms, right? Like teaching doesn't have to happen, right, as, like a tenured professor or tenure track professor. It can happen all these other ways. There's some really great, visiting positions. There are many opportunities now to teach online through various programs like Catapult or the Speakeasy Project. So there are ways to also like gain that teaching experience without being in academia 24/7, and then maybe return to it later on, right? If that makes sense for you, right? But yeah, just really hold on to what drives you. That's the main thing.
Can I share a bit about that too? I, as adjunct professor at MICA, have been dealing with a lot of this navigating around becoming full-time versus part-time, because those are, at least at MICA, the language they use, that's it, right? But it can be very daunting in terms of both responsibility and also respectability, right? People just quite honestly don't respect adjunct professors as much as they respect full-time. They just don't, or tenured, right? So we are often sort of playing the field and teaching over here, right? In order to sort of make ends meet, which, I've been back and forth with myself, like, is this the way that I want to continue living my life, or do I want to go this full-time track? And then I'm like, but what am I giving up if I do that? Right? I'm giving up the sort of autonomy with my time, my energy, my space. Now I'm on 18 committees and doing all of these different things. So think about what comes with it, as well as what you may be also giving up, right? For the sake of a name or a title and all of that. So I'm literally right in the throes of that too. So I definitely empathize, and there are definitely racial and gendered and ageist politics that are attached to all of this as well. So I'm not sure how to navigate that, but I'll just say apply for what you think you want. That's all I will say around that. So.
I see a question in the chat. Yeah, what does being a professional poet look like outside of teaching, from Devin? I have some thoughts, but if anyone else wants to jump in.
Go for it, Chen.
Yeah, I can say, I mean, I know some people who don't do teaching as much. They might work in like the nonprofit sector, in arts administration, or in publishing, right, in editing, or in agenting. So involved in the literary world in these other ways, programming for different literary organizations, things like that. And I also know people who tour a lot, and partly make their living from that. They might do some smaller teaching gigs here and there. But the benefit of that is sort of allows them to travel, go around, and share their work with many audiences. And so yeah, there are definitely different paths outside of like full-time or even part-time teaching.
Aaron, I would love for you to speak to that as well.
Sure. I guess, yeah, I've never taught before. I've worked as a machinist, worked in a window factory, worked as a carpenter, but I've also worked as an editor for various magazines, Poetry Magazine in Chicago, Scientific American Magazine in New York, Aviation Week and Space Technology Magazine, Fine Home Building Magazine, which brought all of my carpentry experience together, along with my editing work. Trying to think. So, I've definitely been pretty scrappy as far as, what I've done to keep food on the table. Had a lot of freelancing writing assignments of various sorts. Copy editing is something that I've been able to turn to. Had the Overlook Press, Penguin, some other larger publishing houses, was able to do proofreading and copy editing of novels and nonfiction books. And that's been kind of a bread and butter skill. Being a handyman and a carpenter has been a bread and butter skill that I can turn to. And then, as far as my work is concerned, as a poet, I've just kind of been grinding away in the shadows. I write my poems and I send them out for publication through Submittable or through the mail, and 99% of those are rejected, and maybe 3 poems a year are accepted for publication. And enough years go by and start to put together a book, and then I send that around and that gets rejected for years. And that's, but I keep writing all the same. And that part is just, I'm not, it's obvious to me now that I'm not the kind of poet that like wins prizes and things like that, and that's okay. That's okay. But I love making poems and trying to be a good steward to the work, to try to help it find a home that's appropriate for the work as best I can, and just keep making the best poems that I can too. So that's my experience.
Thank you. So we have a question in the chat, which I'll read in a second, but I want to suggest that if you mention a resource, Aaron, I think you mentioned Submittable, and Chen, you mentioned a resource earlier, support for Asian poets, Asian American poets. I'd love to see those in the chat. I'm sure that might be helpful for people. So if you can drop those, any resources you mentioned in the chat, that would be great. And the next question is from Ryan. Ryan says, hello, I really appreciate you all sharing your poetry. It's been way too long since I've heard poetry spoken. I'm struggling with creativity lately. As professional poets and creatives, what advice would you have towards working through blockages and getting towards publishing your work? Also for Aaron, how did you get into writing and editing professionally for magazines? Did you start with freelancing? I'm trying to break into freelancing, but unsure how to start. Thank you all again for your time tonight. I really appreciate this. So maybe we can divide that, since Aaron just spoke. Maybe one of our other panelists wants to address the part about getting through blockages, and then we can come back to Aaron to talk about the publishing piece, or the freelancing piece.
Sure, I'll talk about blockages. So I had a lot of those. So it's okay though, right? Like, I think blockages can seem scary because they seem uncertain, right? You don't know how long it's going to last. You're kind of like, everything I write is trash, right? That's kind of the feeling, right? But we can be very hard on ourselves, even harder, I think, in those times, right? And I think in those particular moments, maybe the question is sort of to step back and just sort of let whatever's going to come out, right? To not judge whatever you're writing is so harshly, and that usually there's something underneath of that needs to be said, right? And maybe sometimes, speaking for myself here, I've been maybe afraid of what was going to come out, or, oh my God, this is going to take me so long to write. I don't feel like doing this, right? Like, you know, it could be any number of ways that we stand in our way, but in actuality, the stream is always there, right? So whatever sort of space you could find yourself to be in, right? Like, honor that space, but also know that it will move on its own, and then you'll be able to write again, right? I think my first year in grad school, I had a bit of a writing blockage because I was like, I don't know what I write like anymore. Like, everybody's telling me how to write, and I'm around all of these poets doing experimental stuff, and I've never seen any of this in my life, and I had hella imposter syndrome for a minute. So I was like, I don't know what I sound like. And then that second semester, I sort of let all of that go, and I just started writing. I was like, I'm homesick. What do I know best? Baltimore. Let me write about that, right? And then all of these poems started coming out and flooding out of me, and they became my manuscript, which is now a book, right? Four Wings and a Prayer. So it's always there. You just got to be patient with yourself sometimes, and just not put the pressure to do the work on you, because that will stop the flow of the work. It just will. And just let whatever's going to flow out. Even if that's a free write, if that's I'm not, automatic writing. I don't know what your preference is, but just allowing space for that creative process. And then you can make sense of that after, you know what I'm saying? That's what the drafts are for. So that's, I guess, my advice. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Unique. Aaron, should we move back to you? Where's that question?
Sure. I'll try to keep things succinct. After I graduated from Hampshire, I moved back to my hometown of Rochester, New York, and was a machinist for a while. And then I sold everything I owned and hopped on an Amtrak to Chicago. I had no job lined up. Had my pea coat as a pillow / blanket for the first few months. And I applied, I looked in the yellow pages and saw poetry in the yellow pages. And I called them up and sent in my resume just on a whim. I had read the magazine all the while I was in Hampshire, but I never looked to see where it was from. I didn't think of literary magazines as being a place that you would work at. So I never bothered to see where Poetry Magazine was published. And little did I know, I wound up interviewing for Poetry Magazine, and started as a volunteer, but then it turned into a part-time position. And then I was brought on full-time. I worked there for about 5 years, and left when they got the Lilly endowment. I resigned and went to Syracuse for their grad program. The skills that there were only four of the whole organization. There were 4 of us. So I did all the typesetting, the marketing. I was the webmaster, did subscriptions, screening, all of the submissions, all the filing. It wore many different hats, and it gave me a really strong foundation in all the basic moving parts and of event planning, designing, using design software to design invitations and menus, and direct marketing campaigns, email marketing, lots of different skill sets, because we're a scrappy little office with very little resources. And all of that came in very handy and useful over the over the years. But that's what got me on my way, was that. And then after Syracuse, I moved to New York and worked for CLMP, the Council of the Community of Literary Magazines and Presses. And then I worked for Scientific American and was a copy and research editor for them. And that gave me a very strong foundation in the art and craft of copy editing, which was has more or less been my main professional work has been as a copy editor.
So much information there. So Chen put some really great information in the chat about teaching, just to continue that thread. And I just want to read this one to make sure you actually enjoy teaching. I think teaching often is kind of one of the most obvious ways to make money as any kind of artist. So I'm a visual artist, let me teach art. I'm a writer, let me teach writing. But teaching really is, as you said, Chen, an art form in itself. It's not easy. So it's important to make sure that you enjoy that and that it's a way you want to spend your time, because it certainly does take a lot of time and a lot of effort. Do we have anyone else have a final question? I think we have time for one more. Quinlan, I see your hand.
This might be silly and not entirely related to living your life as a poet. What I mean, maybe because I'm wondering if I could have tips for revising poems. I think my professor's starting to become irritated because I'll change like 2 words and then I don't know what else to change. But yeah, just anything.
Oh my God, I love revision and I used to hate it. I used to be very bad at it. And I think what changed was trying not to be such a perfectionist. Of like, I need this to just be fixed already. So being more patient with the process too. And the thing is, being in a workshop, being in a class, there are a lot of things that you can get out of it, but it's also a pretty artificial setting, right? Like the pacing of it. And so part of it might just, it might involve finding your own pace, like how quickly or how slowly do you want to work? So for instance, for me, I like to put aside poems for a long time. Sometimes just a couple weeks, sometimes 6 months, sometimes a year, and then come back to it because I need distance. I need critical distance from it before I can really do something more transformative with a revision. I also try to think of revision as generative, that it's not just like fixing what's already on the page, but I might just give myself the assignment with a poem that I think is even like nearly there, or there's something I feel stuck about, like say the ending, and I'll just try to write like 5 different endings, right? And just save all the drafts, because you can always go back, right, to an earlier version if that's what ends up feeling right to you. But I like to sort of like test it out, right? See different versions of it, write it in a way that you would never have done before, right? Like, what if there was a joke at the end of this poem, or what if an elephant showed up? So like deliberately throwing a wrench into your own design. I think that can be really fun because it kind of disrupts your usual patterns of thought, your habitual ways of entering and exiting a poem. So yeah, letting yourself be more flexible in the composition and having fun with it, and seeing it as something that's malleable, right? Like how musicians are with a piece of music where they'll perform it this way, they'll perform it another way. Like actors do this, right? Multiple takes, and just think of them as multiple versions, multiple takes. You can go back to an earlier version. You can go around and pick the best bits from each version and collage those together. I also recommend playing like some like revision games. So these might involve like reading the poem out loud in a very kind of wacky way. So for instance, reading it out loud to a friend while taking like 4 sips of water as you're reading it at various points, and just see how that feels, you know, like how does that change your relationship to the text? How do you see it differently? Or read it lying down, right? Read it in a gas station and see what comes up for you. So all of this is, you know, to try to kind of interrupt your initial intentions and vision for the piece and see what else might be possible. Yeah.
Cool. So I think we're at the time where we wanted to just give our panelists a chance to say one more thing, whatever might be on your mind. And I just want to put out there something that's on my mind, which you can address or not. But I'm kind of struck by a theme of vulnerability, of the vulnerability of going to a grad program, the imposter syndrome of that, the vulnerability of traveling across the country, having no place to live, no idea what you're doing, and then just calling a magazine, the vulnerability of putting yourself out there, your work out there to the world. So I want to just put that out there, invite you if you wish to address that. I saw that as a theme, or anything else, if there's something else that you really wanted to say. Unique, we haven't heard from you for a while, so maybe we'll start with you and then just have each of you make your final comment.
Sure thing. Well, thank you. This has been super great tonight. I'm really honored to be here. And if anyone ever wants to stay in touch, my email is in a number of those websites, but it's also here. So I did want to say that much too, if there's anything that comes up that you don't remember or anything like that. So, but with that said, yes, vulnerability. I think the older I get as a writer and as a person, the more vulnerable I become. And I know that I wouldn't have that without writing. I know I wouldn't have that without poetry. Like, it has made me, it has been the sort of emotional lens through which I see myself and my life and everything in it. So poets are always just sort of picking up on things in our environment where it's like, oh, I see all of this happening, but now I'll get my subconscious will take a hold of it, and now I'm writing a poem about it, right? Like, I didn't even know that moment affected me in that way until there's a poem, right? So I think just allowing oneself to be open to the shifts that take place, even in your writing, even in your topics, even in your themes, like all of that, like, we tend to be scared of that as writers. Well, speaking for myself, but it's actually a good thing, right? If you're shifting and your work is shifting, allow it, right? You don't know what's going to come up on the other side of that, or where that will lead to, or who that will inspire, or any of that, right? So yeah, just trust the process. I'm going to always say that. Just trust the process of your work, trust the process of your writing, and of what opens for you and what paths open for you from here, truly. So that's all. Thank you.
Aaron, do you want to go next?
Sure. I guess I remember back when I first started sending work out, it made me sick to my stomach. On more than one occasion. This is when it was all paper submissions only, and I think more than once I stayed camped out by the mail drop box, like waiting for the post office, the postal person to come so I could take the envelope back. Like, I had like these horrible like regrets. I was terrified of sending the work out. Just was so sick and fearful about the whole enterprise of that stuff. And I wish that there was like something that I could say that could spare someone all of that perfectionism and overthinking, and it's really at the end of the day, it's a form of self-harm. You know, the idea of looking to the literary world for acceptance or rejection. So to really think about some of the bald psychology of what's behind that. I know for me, I struggled with substance abuse, you know, alcoholism and substance abuse for a very long time. I've been sober for 18 years now, and I dealt with my vulnerabilities, my fears, my insecurities with a lot of self-harm in various ways. And so by addressing the spiritual side of things, everything else opened up. I found a deeper connection to my work, to my relationships with people. Because when I look back now, what my writing life has been about, it's been about the friends that I've made along the way in a really, you know, discovering the work of people whose work that you love and admire, and you reach out to them and you build these relationships over time, you know, decades. And you know, some of the, you know, I just got done moving and met, you know, in Albany, there was a guy who reached out last year and asked me to submit some poems to his magazine. And I met him for the first time in Albany. He just moved there, and he met up with me and helped my wife and I pack our moving van, and, you know, help us pack that up so we could move our things. And I got to meet him in person and hug him for the first time. It's kind of wild how something that begins on the page turns into, you know, a real relationship with a human being, to connect with people. And that's an abstract thing to communicate when you're in a creative writing workshop, the idea that you're going to have this rich, full life of, you know, warm, real relationships with creative people that you respect and admire. It's like you'll actually have that life, but it's something that takes patience and time and openness. And it might not look the way that you had anticipated, but what comes back in return is much more beautiful than anything you could have authored. So thank you.
Can I share a poem? It's a short one by Linda Gregg that I'm just obsessed with. It's called Ideology, and it's from, I need to get the book, honestly. Been meaning to read more Linda Gregg. But it's from Carl Phillips's Instagram, so I'll just put the link in the chat. And yeah, this is just so lovely to connect with you all. So this poem's called Ideology, which I always have to look up the definition of. It means from medicine, the cause, set of causes, or manner of causation of a disease or condition. And this is the poem. Etiology. Cruelty made me. Cruelty in the sweet smelling earth and the wet scent of bay, the heave and the rumps of horses galloping. Heaven forbid that my body not perish with the rest. I have smelled the rotten wood after rain and watched maggots ride on dead animals. I have lifted the dead owl while it was still warm. Heaven forbid that I should be saved. Just like, ugh! Yeah, let me just put in the chat. I can just close with this comment. Yeah, every writer I know, every single writer that I've talked to has some kind of imposter syndrome or doesn't feel enough in some way. And this is why, yeah, we have events like this, we have to talk to each other. We have to take care of each other and support one another. Because yeah, it can be a very, very lonely endeavor, right? So we have to find ways to gather and talk about what we're experiencing.
Do you all continue to be in writing groups?
So I have writer friends. I have like first readers for a bunch of my work that I just check in with, and I'm like, please don't let me embarrass myself by publishing this. So tell me if it's, you know, doing the thing or not. So yeah, we share drafts and talk about our writing lives and blockages, and yeah, we help, yeah, kind of lift each other up.
I have a friend, Kenneth something. He's a world-renowned slam poet champion. And we actually were together writing a play about a poetry slam. That's a whole thing. You didn't hear any of that, but yeah, like he's my sort of sounding board, because I know that he will be very honest about where my writing is or where his is, or, you know, we just sort of play off of each other in that way. And yeah, I do exist in a really good writers community of poets who think of it like iron sharpening iron, because they're always slamming, right? I'm not in the slam world anymore. I'm very good on that, but it helps to sort of be slam adjacent, to sort of have that, like, all right, let me sharpen my own sword, so to speak. So yeah.
I guess for me, yeah, I definitely work pretty much in isolation. There's a core group of people that I know that I can turn a draft to even if it's you know, these aren't like line by line analysis kinds of things. They know me, and they know what I'm after in my work, and if they can see something at work in it, whether it's something that's worth continuing to refine or not. But yeah, it's a small group of people, and the idea of like an organized workshop type thing, it took me a long time to get all of those voices out of my mind. I think it, for me it might work for some people, but that did more harm than good for someone like me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All of you.
So this has just been fantastic. It's so amazing to hear the different stories and about the process of writing and teaching and publishing, and just how poetry weaves in and out of people's lives. So thank you so much, each of you. Each time we do one of these events, I feel like I learn more, and we get deeper into just who you are as writers, and it's so beautiful. So I put the link in the chat to the Writers Advisory Council. So students, alums who are participants in this program, make sure you grab that link, because that's how you can stay connected with this group. There are 7 more members of the council who will be doing events over the next 2 years and hopefully beyond. The next one we have scheduled, like tentatively scheduled, is for February, and that will be an event with Julia Botero, who writes for the podcast Modern Love. It should be really fun. It's going to be Valentine's week, the Thursday of Valentine's week. I can't remember the exact date. So that's the next one we're working on. And then in the spring, there will also be one, hopefully, I haven't confirmed that one yet, but about making a living as a writer through communications and marketing, and that angle on writing. Let's see, we're right at time. So people who play with words, I want to ask for your help. CORC, which is our office, stands for Career Options Resource Center, and we are in the process of changing our name, but we don't know what our new name is, and we're looking for it. So we have a survey out to help us find language and words and ways to express what we do. And there's more about that in the survey. And if you could pick up that survey from the chat and fill it out, we would be ever so grateful. And Hampshire students will get entered into a raffle to win a $25 gift certificate to the Kern Cafe for filling out that survey. But we really love when people have good language ideas. I think that's what we're looking for. So this is a great group of people to ask, I feel. Quinlan, thank you. Yay, you already submitted. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to sign off and say good night. Thank you, everyone. This was fantastic. And I hope you'll join us for future events, which will be listed on the Writers Council website. And there's also a mailing list that you can join, which is on the website. So make sure that you stay in the loop on those. So take care, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.